As promised, we've been telling you about a third day of NATO bombings is now underway. So why is Slobodan Milosevic standing firm? Joining us now with some perspective on all this from Washington, Jonathon Clarke of the Serbian Unity Congress. And here in our studio is Joseph DioGuardi, president of the Albanian American Civic League. Gentlemen, welcome. Nice to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Mr. DioGuardi, we've been talking about the escalating atrocities that have been taking place. NATO is confirming this. The State Department has word that this is taking place, and the White House acknowledges the same. There are those who suggest that this conflict is only making matters worse for the ethnic Albanians. How do you see it?
Umar, it's a shame that it came this far. We saw the Albanian repression for years. Since 1974, there's been virulent anti-Albanian racism by the Serbian people. It's been a very hostile regime for the Albanians. In 1989, Milosevic walked in and took everything away from the Albanians. Now, having said that, we acted just in the nick of time. I have to praise, I'm a Republican, and I praise President Clinton for finally showing our teeth. Because had we waited, as we did in Bosnia, we could have lost, who knows what's happening right now. This is the tragedy. But we lost 250,000 civilians in Bosnia by waiting 2 years. Our president knew that. That's why he acted now. One of the things that we should be considering right now is arming the Kosovo Liberation Army to defend those civilians. We did this in Bosnia. We armed the Croatian forces in Bosnia. It was that, along with the airstrikes, that brought Milosevic to the table. So we don't need to be talking about U.S. ground troops right now. We need to be talking about getting the weapons to the Kosovo Liberation Army, because we know this man by his deeds. He will massacre more and more Albanians. There's a revenge going on right now. I heard this morning 20 teachers were executed in the town of Jakova, literally taken out and executed.
That's a report that remains unconfirmed at this point, but certainly it sounds like a horrific story. Mr. Clarke, what do you think? There are those who suggest that no longer can we stay silent on this issue. Obviously, we're involved, but the only way to really make a difference is to arm the resistance movement there.
I think that would be a complete disaster. What we're seeing here is the result of a premature Western intervention. Last week, there were monitors on the ground. The situation was calm, was under control. Now the monitors have been withdrawn. We have essentially lost control of the situation there. And tragedy is definitely taking place. And what we must do is get as back quickly as possible, as the Italians and the Greeks are suggesting, as quickly as possible back to the negotiating table, get back monitors into Kosovo, and then take it from there. That is the way to defuse the crisis. Not, of course, to pour more arms into the region. That would be a recipe for disaster.
At the same time, even with those monitors in place, the atrocities were continuing. So how do you respond to that?
No, they weren't, you see. They were under control. The level of violence was very much reduced. That is a myth, I'm afraid, that the United States is now putting about. Get the monitors back in their place, and then the crisis will be under control.
Let me just ask you, do you think this propaganda put up by the White House? I know that there are reports from other human rights groups who acknowledge the same and say that this information was correct, that this was taking place despite the monitors.
The Serbian Unity Congress is also receiving reports of civilians being killed. From Dečani Monastery, for example, Father Sava is saying that civilians are being killed by cruise missiles. So long as this situation goes on, there will be no way forward. The best way is to resume peace negotiations, get people back on the ground. That's the way to get the situation under control.
We try this time and time again. Mr. Milosevic has violated every agreement he has made, including the recent one, the ceasefire in October. He put 40,000 troops into Kosovo recently in violation of that agreement with the M84 tanks. And by the way, last summer, over 250 Albanian villages were torched and ethically cleansed. No monitors were allowed into those villages. There may have been tens of thousands of Albanians already killed. So we're not getting the information. I have to disagree with Jonathon.
Mr. Clarke, you say that we need to have diplomacy act as the primary force here. At the same time, Mr. Milosevic says there's nothing more to talk about. He does not want to give in and allow for the autonomy of Kosovo. So how do you respond to that? How can there be peace in the region if he won't even engage in negotiations himself?
Now, the Serbian Unity Congress does not speak for Mr. Milosevic at all. But what we are saying, that there are plenty of people of goodwill. Last week in Vienna, there was a meeting, an interfaith meeting. Jewish, Orthodox, Muslim and Orthodox faiths came together and showed the way that people can work together. These are the sort of forces we should be working with. not simply making Milosevic our partner, not putting him at center stage. There are plenty of other people.
Unfortunately, he is at center stage at this very minute.
Only because he has been put there by the United States and NATO. It is completely unnecessary.
Well, there's an element of truth to that, because we have been against our foreign policy here since we decided to make Slobodan Milosevic, a de facto war criminal, our partner in peace. By giving him a place at the table at Dayton and listening to him by excluding the Albanians. And that's why this crisis is so bad. The Dayton Accords did not include the third largest group in the Balkans, the Albanian people, 7 million people. So there's an element of truth to that. Mr. Holbrooke has that responsibility for making Mr. Milosevic our partner in peace. But now that we know who he is, what he has done, and we've tried everything, including a last-minute trip by Mr. Holbrooke, there was no choice. Otherwise, you would see a civilian massacre on a grand scale, and it's going on right now.
It's unfortunate it is going on right now, and certainly something that we're keeping a close watch on. Gentlemen, I'm sorry we're out of time, but I appreciate you joining us with your insights, and we will be checking back with you in the days ahead.